This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 67 of the Wisdom by WESA show on the Horse Radio Network. This is Mike Donnell.
I'm Casey Wilbanks-Coletti.
And this is Sophia Aguilar. Welcome to Wisdom by WESA on the Horse Radio Network.
This podcast is brought to you by the Western and English Sales Association, WESA, which provides the world's largest trade events for retailers, manufacturers, and sales representatives of the equestrian industry. In this podcast, we feature exclusive interviews with noteworthy Western and English personalities, retailers, and exhibitors who you've always wanted to talk to. Don't miss out on all the news from manufacturers and retailers in the equine industry. Last week, we spoke with Buck Anderson, and he shared some memories of the WESA trade show from the 90s. Sophia is here to tell us maybe if there's any memories the WESA staff can share with us.
So, yes, in 1995, the Denver Mart expanded and opened the Pavilion, which is actually where we always held our second show, the fall show in Denver. And as Buck mentioned, the 75th anniversary was in 1997, and it was also the year that WESA had a record number of memberships. It was 1,200 manufacturers and sales representatives. And the Denver Mart then expanded again in 1998 by opening up the plaza, which again added to our square footage.
Were you there?
I was not. No.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Today, moving into the 21st century, what can you tell us about that time?
Yes, today we'll get to speak with Jack Tait, and he was the president when WESA celebrated the 80th anniversary. And during that trade show, the fashion show was one to remember, and we will share some images along with today's episode so everyone could take a look back at the fashion of the early 21st century.
During his entire sales career, Jack Tait represented footwear. First Uniroyal, then Minnetonka. It was while he was based in a showroom at the Denver Merchandise Mart that his fellow salespeople representing other lines encouraged him to run for the WESA board. He eventually moved up to become president in 2001 and 2002, but he's equally well known for the WESA in the WESA world as the guy who organized a successful golf tournament every year in conjunction with the fall show, which raised funds for youth rodeo, including Little Britches and the National High School Rodeo Association. Jack's with us today to talk about all that. If you're primarily involved in the show horse world, perhaps you should have the Plaidcast show on your podcast playlist. This weekly show, hosted by Piper Clem, publisher of the Plaid Horse magazine, features guests including Olympian equestrians, top hunter, jumper, and equitation riders, trainers, horse show managers, and industry insiders. One episode each month is devoted to the mental side of the sport with nationally recognized mental skills coach and author Tanya Johnston. Jack Tait, thank you so much for joining us today on the Wisdom by WESA podcast.
Thank you. I'm very thankful.
Well, we're glad to have you here. We have been and will be interviewing other people who have been on the WESA board and have been an officer of WESA from time to time. But we wanted to chat with you for several reasons. But you and I chatted yesterday about the fact that your entire career in the retail and the apparel world was primarily in the footwear business. Why don't you go back to Uniroyal and give us the high spots to point when you got to Minnetonka and then got involved in WESA?
Okay. Well, when I retired from an 18-year career with Minnetonka, they had a preference. I had a preference in the Denver Merchandise Mart as a part-time sales manager for Leather Gallery and the current chairman of the board of Leather Gallery, and also for a 41-year career in sales And it begins with a part-time shoe salesman when I was going through college. That's when in high school too, but through college. And worked my way up to the president of WESA. And my first shoe job, I acquired a love for selling. And after I got my degree at Eastern Montana College in Billings, I started into a full-time job with Uniroyal in 1964. And I sold Kids Grasshoppers, Pro Kids, Red Ball, and Uniroyal brands, and moved to the Denver Merchandise Mart when the company opened a showroom there. And that was in 1972. And 3 years later, I was promoted to sales manager and stayed with the company until it closed the Mart showroom in 1979. And after moving to the LA Mart as the Western Regional Manager for Uniroyal, I decided the Denver Merchandise Mart was a better fit for me. And I returned later that year to become a partner in Dunn Shoe and Leather Company, who wanted to form a footwear division of their company. And that was in 1986. Then I joined Minnetonka Moccasins after we sold Dunn Shoe Company, and was with them for 18 years. And I spent 32 years at the Denver Merchandise Mart tenant. And when I was with Minnetonka, I became a sales rep for them, and also I attended, belonged to WESA, and that worked out very well for me because I had a permanent showroom in the Mart, and all of the Western sales, WESA sales shows were at the Denver Merchandise Mart. And I got very involved with WESA. And I was elected to the board in 1990. After moving through all the chairs, I served one term as president, which is a 2-year term, and a 2-year term as chairman of the board.
Jack, can I interrupt you for a second? Because you told me a great story yesterday, and I want you to review it for our listeners. And that was your very first board meeting when you showed up on the stage.
Well, what that was it was at the very first market that I attended, where I was on the stage with the board of directors. I was not an officer. I was just a member of the board. And the owner, since I was working for Minnetonka, I wore Minnetonka clothing and also footwear. And this gentleman was the owner and president of a big Western wear hat company. And he informed me and the board that it was very unusual to have someone on the board of directors with no Western apparel on whatsoever. And he and I came back to him saying, "You're absolutely correct. If I'm going to represent the Western industry, the least I can do is wear the apparel of the Western industry, whether it be boots or a jacket or pants or whatever, and that it would never happen again." And it didn't. I went out and purchased wholesale from all my buddies that sold those items, and picked out 5 or 6 boots and a lot of jackets and pants, and I had a wardrobe then that I could feel comfortable at a market. So that he corrected me, and he was absolutely online, and I was obliged to help him out and help it. Yes. Mm-hmm. So in a way, that's how I got my Western apparel that I wore all the time I was at a market.
Well, and it worked out pretty well for you, and it worked out pretty well for them. Talk to us a little bit, because you and I talked about it as well. Yes. In addition to being an officer and a board member of WESA and dealing with the internal things, you got involved in producing that annual golf tournament that was held every year in Denver. And I'm curious as to how that came about and how you went about doing that.
Well, I had a little help from my son. He is a professional golfer, and he was the head pro of one of the big golf courses here in Denver, a private course. And when I told him that I wanted to start, this was in 2001 when I was president, that we would begin. I checked with a bunch of the other board members and said, "What about us prior to the market having a golf show where where we could benefit somebody in the Western industry?" So that's how it got started. He helped me get it organized. We put it together, and we had our first one in 2001 in September at our fall show. And we had about 45 or 50 people show up for that golf tournament, and it just caught fire, and it just kept going until we were having over 100 people there attending our golf outings. And we also benefited a lot of people. The first one, we had three times we did it for the let me see if I get, for the handicapped. It was a North America riding for handicapped people. So we did that for 3 years. And then we moved the show to his golf course, or the market, or the golf program to his show instead of in Westminster, where we were holding it for the first 3 years. And at that time, when we moved it there in 2004, we changed and went to the sponsorship for the National Little Britches Rodeo and high school rodeo associations. So they were then awarded the monies that we made during the tournament for their needs. And I continued to play in every golf tournament they had, and we had a full team, and we had lots of sponsors, manufacturers, and so forth that played in the golf, set teams in to play in the golf tournament. And I continued playing until I retired. So the golf tournament, I participated for 17 years in that.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. Casey, hop in here.
Jack, well, I just want to say thank you for being such a large part of the Western industry for so many years. And I was a National Little Britches Rodeo member many years ago. So it means a lot to me, and my life of yesteryear, to have people like you that was so dominant in this industry, and for my daughter that may be in Little Britches and within the Western industry in the future. So you're one of those that paved the way for so many things. In direct regards to WESA, I just want to know your thoughts about the fashion part of our Western industry, and maybe even what the secret to the longevity of Western fashion, because it's something that's been around for a long time and it's not going anywhere.
Well, things change, and Western is back in the days when they had a lot of Western movies, there was a lot of Western songs. It was a much more popular category than maybe it is today. And also the marketing of Western wear has changed substantially from the time I started. And at the time we established WESA, we had over 500 salesmen. This was a salesman's organization, not a manufacturer's. It was a salesman. And we ran the markets for our manufacturers. And now, with the way things are going, there's less salesmen out there traveling now, because most of the manufacturers have either gone direct to the consumer or they are hiring their own sales force rather than using a salesman to travel several states with several different lines, which is what most of our guys did back in those days. So it has changed, and they just don't wear Western wear like they used to, even here in the West. So it has changed. So it's different now. But
Sure.
I still think that there's a place for WESA. They'll just have to get the smaller retailers that do continue to carry a lot of Western wear. The chains, they don't want salesmen calling on them. The big chains, they'll deal directly with the manufacturer, and they end up getting the salesman's commissions. So they got a little better margins on their profits. So it has changed substantially from when I was involved. But there is still a need for a WESA. Okay,
Sure.
There is a need for them, and even though I no longer go to any of their markets in Dallas, I still want them to be successful in what they do, and but it has changed. Yes, it's much different than it was when I was involved.
We say that WESA is where the industry meets, and as you mentioned, there is a need for WESA, and as long as there are retailers, whether they're brick and mortar or online stores and brands, WESA is always going to be an industry standard, and I think that's something to speak highly of and be very. It's really nice to talk to you, someone that has been a part of it and it's a part of its success.
Well, thank you, and I have a lot of dear friends in the industry, and I want them to continue to be successful. And WESA is certainly the way to go. And I concur with what you said 100%.
Jack, listen, I appreciate you taking the time to give us your perspective on both your career and the changes that WESA has made in terms of the way people go to market, the way that products are sold, and it's been a pleasure to have you as a guest on our show.
Well, I thank you for asking me. I spent a lot of years in WESA and with them, and I can say that I'm hopeful that everything works well for them. It's a whole new world, but I enjoyed every minute that I spent with the Western industry and with the involvement with WESA. So let's just hope that everything works well for everybody, and that there's a long life for WESA.
Well, and Jack, we wish you well also, and thank you for taking the time to be with us on Wisdom by WESA.
Hey, thank you very much, and appreciate your help.
The show notes and links from today's show can be found at wisdombywesa.com. And of course, we'd always like to hear your feedbacks. There is a contact link on that site.
The Wisdom by WESA show will be published on the 15th and 30th of every month. You can listen on most of your favorite podcast players, and you can also listen on the Horse Radio Network app on your iOS or Android phone. You just search Horse Radio Network in the App Store. It's free and super easy to use. Be sure to visit all the great shows on the Horse Radio Network at horseradionetwork.com. Thanks for listening to the Wisdom by WESA podcast. WESA, where the industry meets.